This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news, a horrifying scene at a crowded apartment complex in Virginia Beach as a Navy jet crashes into buildings there, shooting flames and thick black smoke into the sky. The crew members ejected and were taken to the hospital. Now an urgent effort to account for all the people on the ground. Our Brian Todd has the very latest details. Brian, what do we know?
Joe, the very latest from fire and rescue officials in Virginia Beach. We know that at least 6 people have been injured. That includes the 2 crew members, 4 others on the ground injured, taken to local hospitals. At least one of them, we believe, is a policeman treated for smoke inhalation. These injuries not believed to be life-threatening. And to show you some of the pictures, the horrific-looking pictures from this event first, then we're going to talk location. But you see some of these pictures here of the aftermath, that aerial view of this apartment complex that the FA-18D fighter jet from Oceana Naval Air Station crashed into. This occurred just after noon, according to Navy officials. At about 12:30 p.m., Virginia Transportation Department cameras showed some of the images that you're seeing here. Thick black smoke emanating from the scene. Now let's talk location. We've got a map here. We're going to just play this for you here. This is Oceana Naval Air Station in Virginia Beach. It's about 2 miles from Oceana to this apartment complex. Now, what we're told from the local battalion chief there is that there are about 8 apartments to each building in this complex, and that at least 5 buildings were hit. From our own forensic view of this from the aerial footage, we know that at least these 4 buildings here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, were hit. This one looks to maybe be a part of a 5th one here, but again, crews are combing through this wreckage now, getting an assessment. And please, we have to caution you, these early assessments on injuries, casualties, very, very early in the process. They are still combing through this wreckage right now. This complex on Bird Neck Road, it's the Mayfair Mews complex on Bird Neck Road, just about 2 miles from the Oceana Naval Air Station in Virginia Beach. Now we're going to show you kind of where this is in relation to the Atlantic Ocean, to Virginia Beach. Going to continue playing our Google Earth map here, zooming back over here, about a mile, maybe even less, from the beach here, Virginia Beach and downtown Virginia Beach, right about here. Also worth noting that this is the area of spring break, early April, late March, spring break going on. A lot of vacationers in Virginia Beach. When you talk about, what could have potentially happened here, very, very frightening story. According to Tom Riley, the battalion chief for the Virginia Fire Department, Virginia Beach Fire Department, his main concern right now, and you can see it in the video, his main concern is the fibers from the smoke. Top priority, he says, is containing the smoke. And we just heard a witness on our air say he came upon the scene fairly early. He said it was really this thick, oily smoke. And he says if you've been in this area and you've been around some of these mishaps with these fighter jets, you know that that's a very distinctive type of smoke that you can potentially inhale, can be very damaging. Also worth noting here, Joe, one witness named Amy Miller was on our air a short time ago. She said she works just around the corner from this apartment building where this happened. She said she saw flames underneath the right wing of this FA-18D fighter jet as it was coming down. She also then heard 2 explosions. She also told us there is a school nearby. So again, when you talk about that school nearby that was avoided, the potential casualties in the downtown Virginia Beach area, you realize just how frightening an incident this was. But again, early assessment on casualties, 6 people hurt, including the 2 crew members, taken to area hospitals. One of them, we're told, is a policeman treated for smoke inhalation. Again, a very early assessment of those injuries. This could very well change in the coming hours, Joe.
Now, Brian, just taking everything that you've reported here and putting it together, it sounds like that kind of smoke would make it very difficult for the authorities to get any kind of a door-to-door assessment of who might still have been inside the building.
That is correct. And police were still going around to other buildings in the area looking to see who was home, who might have been around at the time. But as you see, and you can see from this video that we're seeing here, a lot of these buildings and the things that the fire crews are actually having to touch and sift through, still just incredibly hot to the touch. You've got foam there, and not clear exactly how dangerous that might be to navigate through. But the smoke inhalation, we heard it from Tom Riley, the battalion chief of the Virginia Beach Fire Department, say his top priority right now, containing the smoke. His main worry is the carbon fibers from that smoke just being inhaled by people who are around that area. And that includes, of course, the first responders who are really risking their lives just going through this, trying to find people. Very early in the process still, Joe, and and just clearly some harrowing images that we're seeing here.
And I would imagine very difficult to assess just how long it'll be before they think it's safe to enter and try to get that assessment.
That's right. It's probably several hours before it's safe to enter some of these areas that were hardest hit by this crash. You've got, again, smoldering smoke and flames all over this apartment complex. It does look like a fairly small area contained, but again, you've got at least 2 or 3 floors of each building, and we're told 5 buildings were hit. One of them looked completely devastated, look at it like it had just been gutted. So that building, again, is very hard to assess who was in there at the time, and as you said, it might take hours for them to be able to sift through it.
All right. Great reporting there. Thanks so much. Stay on this story, Brian, and we will definitely be getting back to you. Let's turn now to CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr, who's been all over this story since it broke. And Barbara, this is an area where the Navy has a very large presence. So watching that, and do you have any updated developments from the Pentagon?
Well, that's right, Joe. I mean, I think the question that a lot of people are asking, as you point out, large presence, what was this aircraft doing flying over a residential area? The Navy operates an F-18 training unit in Oceana, and what they do is they train for carrier landings, where they get enough training on land, then they go out to sea and they learn how to land and take off from an aircraft carrier at sea, and then they are off to war over the last 10 years. So there have been a number of flights in the Oceana area. Some residents had been talking today about seeing more flights in recent weeks. In fact, they are seeing more flights because one of the airfields that they have used south of town has been closed for maintenance. So they are doing more flights at Oceana. But for years now, they have operated in and out of Oceana, even with the development growing around the region. So what happened today, very unusual and very difficult situation in a populated area. This aircraft ran into trouble within seconds of takeoff. It impacted the ground, hit the ground about 2 miles off the runway. That gave the pilots very little time to react, perhaps just a few seconds. They were able to eject, most likely at a very low altitude. And of course, as we've talked about all day, military pilots are very trained to try and steer away from civilian areas in the United States where they're operating. They do everything they can, no matter what is going on in an emergency, to try and steer clear. By all accounts today, they tried to avoid that school. And thankfully, at least the early reports, only some people hurt, but those search parties go on, Joe.
And obviously, this is something that people don't normally think about, but a low-level ejection from a fighter jet could certainly cause tremendous hazards. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. This is not, ejecting from your fighter jet at the best of times is an extremely dangerous procedure, especially in combat, which is what it is designed for, basically. You have a rocket charge under your seat. You pull the handle, the cockpit cover flies away, and you are basically launched into the air at an altitude that you then deploy your parachute and you are able to float down to the ground. But if you're going to have to eject at a low altitude, you don't have that parachute distance to float down. So the pilots were at tremendous risk, a very unusual procedure if that's how it all unfolded, and basically very significant damage on the ground. There would have been damage anyhow, but they didn't have time to dump all their fuel clearly, and that's what you began to see unfold on the ground. The fire, the fuel damage, and the debris field spread out over such a large area because the plane, by all accounts, never really achieved any altitude. It just went straight in. Joe?
Barbara Starr, thanks for that, and we'll be looking to you for future developments. Let's turn now to a witness. She says she was watching the jet in the sky when it crashed, and we want to talk to you a little bit. Are you on the phone there?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Now, Joanna Hyatt, you were there with your 2-year-old child, and you were watching this thing and pointing it out to her, but you didn't think this was some type of a plane in distress. Talk to me a little bit about that.
That's right. I was pointing the fighter jets out to my daughter and immediately saw the pilot eject, saw the parachute, and at that point didn't really pay much attention to the jet itself. In fact, don't really recall what I saw as far as the plane's concerned. I watched the pilot go down, and immediately after, within about 10 seconds, a black plume of smoke came up. And that's when I thought something was awry. I originally thought it was a parachute exercise, and then at that point realized something must have gone wrong and the pilot was ejecting. I was with some friends that lived in the house where I was taking the photo from, and they obviously said that's not routine at all. And there were other fighter jets in the air. They began circling around, and the smoke just started billowing up pretty quickly. At that point, this is about 30 seconds after we heard an explosion, but nothing that would indicate anything that crashed. I mean, that's why I never thought anything was wrong. Initially, there was never any impact noise. We didn't hear or feel anything, but knew at that point something was really wrong. And we jumped into her car, drove around the corner to the apartment complex. She lived literally, 300 meters from there, and that's when we saw lots of black smoke. The entire building that we came up to had been already engulfed, and it was a little strange to see that it was so filled with smoke so quickly.
Ms. Hyatt, now, as I understand it, you took a picture with your iPhone while you were watching this plane. Now, how close were you? We did have some other reports earlier here on CNN that someone saw fire under the right wing of the plane shortly before it crashed. Did you see anything like that?
No, nothing like that. I saw there was multiple fighter jets in the sky. That one was definitely much lower. Maybe that's why it caught my attention. Even when I saw the parachute come out, and I never saw any fire, no flash, nothing.
What was going through your head?
Well, I was excited that Katie, my daughter, could see the parachute. I don't know if she really caught that part or not, but as soon as the smoke came up, it was definitely a feeling in the pit of my stomach that something wasn't right, although I still was questioning if it was nothing major because I hadn't heard any impact. I hadn't felt anything, so I had no cause to be seriously alarmed. But as soon as we heard the minor explosion and then approached the apartment building in the car, we knew things were seriously wrong.
Now, how much do you know about the area? And is it your understanding that on a typical day, people will be inside those buildings?
I'm not from here, so I don't know much about the area, but the friend that I was visiting, the first things that she was saying when we approached was that it was spring break. She knows that apartment complex fairly well, so it's a worldwide mix of people, a lot of families, and that with spring break occurring, there were more apt to be people at home. And we saw people running to the building. There weren't any authorities there at that point, no firemen, no rescue workers. And we were all concerned that were people there to get out? Was there help on the scene to help with that? So it was a little disturbing.
Absolutely, and we've seen a lot of pictures there, people in the area apparently helping the authorities, for sure. Thanks so much, Ms. Hyatt, for that.
You're
we
welcome.
appreciate your picture, and we're glad that you're safe there. Fascinating and a good sign, at least for now, that authorities are saying no one was killed in this horrible accident, though using Brian Todd's caution. It's still very, very early there in the scene, and the authorities have not really been able to get in and go door to door and find out what's what. We're going to hear from more witnesses, including a man who actually found one of the ejected crew members on his back porch, and another man who saw the crew eject and found one of the seats. Plus, what's a pilot supposed to do in a crisis like this? We'll talk to a former Navy pilot about emergency protocols.